Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta. You're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says imposing tariffs on allies is wrong after President Donald Trump threatens duties over Greenland. Trump plans 10% tariffs by February, rising to 25% by June. Germany says Europe is preparing united countermeasures against President Donald Trump's tariff threats over Greenland. Berlin vows not to be blackmailed as European Union partners coordinate a joint response. President Trump tells Norway's Prime Minister the world is not safe without US control of Greenland. His remarks escalate tensions with Europe over the future of the Danish territory. Danish officials have decided to skip the World Economic Forum in Davos. This comes amid intensifying dispute over Greenland that's shaking transatlantic relations. UAE's President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed is in India for a brief but high-level meeting with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Talks are likely to focus on India-UAE comprehensive strategic partnership and the prevailing global issues. The U.S. Justice Department says it sees no basis for a criminal civil rights investigation into the ICE agent who fatally shot Rennie Nicole Good in Minneapolis. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says standard internal reviews apply while the Department of Justice is instead investigating Minnesota officials for allegedly encouraging protests. At least 39 people are killed after two trains collide near Cordoba in southern Spain. Over 70 are hospitalized as authorities launch an investigation into the cause. Syria declares a nationwide ceasefire with Kurdish-led forces after nearly 2 weeks of fighting. The deal integrates into SDF into the state institutions and restores government control over key regions. Viewers, let's now start with the top focus. European leaders are strongly opposing US President Donald Trump's threat to impose tariffs on 8 European Union nations unless the US is allowed to buy Greenland. The tariffs set to rise from 10% to 25% in the coming months target Denmark, Sweden, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Finland, Britain and Norway, which have sent military personnel to Greenland. German officials called the tariff threats unacceptable and vowed to implement countermeasures. The Greenlandic Prime Minister also rejected US pressure maintaining the region's sovereignty. The European Union is considering a €93 billion response package and activating the anti-coercion instrument. Swedish Finance Minister Elisabeth Svantesson condemned the US approach as absurd and emphasized the need for a united European Union response.
Vi kommer naturligtvis fortsätta prata om det som händer runt Grönland. Det absurda i att en amerikansk president använder tullar som ett hot för att försöka köpa eller ta över Grönland. Det är absurt på nya nivåer så att säga. Men vi kommer också fortsätta prata om hur EU kan stärka sin egen konkurrenskraft. Vi har vårt öde mycket i våra egna händer och därför måste Sverige och andra EU-länder bygga starkare grund för tillväxt helt enkelt.
Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer urged calm, calling for diplomatic solutions and warning against escalating tension with allies. He stressed that a tariff war would harm both sides, advocating for dialogue over confrontation. And I welcome Alison Matler, former AP Bureau Chief in Romania, to join me in this discussion. Alison, thanks very much. Firstly, let's talk about Keir Starmer's address today. What does it really speak about European Union, the UK, and all these nations that are now scrambling? But how much is really in their prowess to counter the United States as far as military prowess is concerned?
Well, obviously, the US has the biggest and strongest military in the world. It's clear at the moment, although Donald Trump, the American president, has said he doesn't rule out military force, it's certainly not his first option. And I think it's something he definitely wouldn't really want to seriously consider. In fact, by saying that that he didn't rule it out, I think he was trying to show how serious he was about his administration's desire to acquire Greenland. Now, we have a situation here in Europe. I'm in Romania, which is a member of the European Union, and we have the European Union wanting to not give in to what they call American blackmail and to put in force countermeasures. Then we have, as you mentioned, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer having a more nuanced, if you like, more peaceful response to Donald Trump's threats of 10% tariffs, which would then increase to 25% if no solution is found by June in his favour. Now, this is because, number one, UK is not a member of the European Union anymore since Brexit, so it has a slightly different position. And the other thing is a special relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States, particularly with Donald Trump, who is an Anglophile, whose mother was born in Scotland. And Keir Starmer wants to keep that special relationship, partly because it exists and he thinks it benefits both sides, particularly Britain, which is a much smaller country, but also because the UK has been weakened by exiting the European Union. So he is paying a different card. He's saying that the tariffs are wrong and that's not the way you treat allies, but he's rolling back from having a hardball response to Donald Trump, and that's very deliberate because the UK wants to keep good relations and they have good military relations with the United States as well.
Yeah. So what can the European Union do in combined efforts really to stop Trump? Because earlier as well, Macron has stated, talked about using the bazooka, the coercion mechanism, anti-coercion mechanism, but he had stopped then in the face of Trump's tariff threats.
Well, it's very hard because if the EU does decide it's not going to lie down and take Donald Trump's tariffs or threats of tariffs seriously, and it will respond in equal measure, it will just basically harm both sides, and that means harms the economy of both sides and harm ordinary citizens from an economic point of view. We know how much it's important for the American citizens and also the European citizens to not feel any more pinching in their pockets, as we say. So even if both sides resort to tariffs, it looks to me like a lose-lose situation. So I don't know what can be resolved except through diplomacy, except by trying to understand exactly what Donald Trump wants. Does he want to declare Greenland the 51st state of the United States? It's possible, but also behind the scenes conducting talks, not necessarily just with Trump, but with his inner circle, with his administration, because tariff wars, it just shows that these allies are there are cracks between them, there are divisions, but it doesn't really help either side, and the people that suffer are just the general public, the ordinary people.
All right, sure, Alison. Well, thanks very much for your opinion. Moving ahead, viewers, let's cover some news from Iran, where Foreign Minister will not attend this year's Davos summit following a deadly crackdown on protesters in Iran. The World Economic Forum announced the decision, explaining that it would not be appropriate for the Iranian government to be represented at the event after the recent civilian losses. Meanwhile, Russian Special Envoy Kirill Dmitry will be attending Davos and holding meetings with the US delegates, while Ukraine's top negotiator Rustem Umerov will continue discussions on resolving the nearly 4-year-long war with Russia. President Donald Trump will also be attending in person this year after addressing last year's event remotely. Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, along with Jared Kushner, will travel to Moscow soon for peace talks with no set dates as of now. Trump has claimed that Ukraine, not Russia, is holding up a potential peace deal, contrasting the position of European leaders. All right, viewers, crucial news now coming in. As far as the World Economic Forum is concerned, we've also seen a variety of protests that were being staged in Davos against the tariff threats and the attendance of Donald Trump in person in this year's World Economic Forum. What's noteworthy in the latest is that Iran will not be attending the World Economic Forum, though Russia and Ukraine will be. Now, joining me in this discussion is Professor Rohan Gunratna, who's international affairs expert from Singapore. All right, Professor, thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. Firstly, let's talk about the opposition that's being raised against the World Economic Forum itself, with many saying that not much really comes out of it. It ends up becoming just a photo op for a variety of world leaders.
It is a very significant forum. We cannot say that it is only a photo opportunity, but certainly it is not a decision-making body. It's more advocacy body than a decision-making body. But I personally believe that it is so important in this day and age for such platforms to play a role, because you need to shape and influence the strategic landscape and the thinking of the people. So it is both for what you call enhancing specialist understanding within governments and their partners, especially in the economic field, and also raising public understanding, public awareness.
All right, sure. How do you see the fact that Donald Trump has now decided to join this year's forum in the face of his Board of Peace, where he's invited about 60 countries and expects them to pay $1 billion to stay for over 3 years?
Trump is an unconventional leader. He's a businessman. So he would like very much for there to be a role that is not generally followed by leaders. So he has his own style of doing these things. So I think that it is so important for the leaders of today and the people to understand who Trump is. He's a triumphant leader, and he's a businessman primarily. He thinks of everything in terms of economics. So I think that there should be some understanding between Trump and those who deal with him, especially if they want to deal with him successfully. Otherwise, there'll be challenges and issues.
All right, Professor, do stay on with me as we proceed. Viewers, Syria's army has said that 3 soldiers were killed in fresh attacks today by Kurdish fighters. Meanwhile, the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces accused the government of launching attacks despite a ceasefire announced a day earlier. In a statement to the state media, the army said 3 soldiers were killed and others wounded in 2 attacks without saying where the attacks had occurred. The SDF, in a statement, accused government forces of attacks on its fighters in several locations and in north and northeast Syria, adding that violent clashes were taking place in the vicinity of prison in Raqqa that holds detainees from the Islamic State group. Professor, how do you see violence now spreading to northeast Syria, especially after there were yesterday a ceasefire was arrived upon?
The Kurdish region of Syria is a very rich region. Oil, gas, water dams. So certainly the Kurds have dominated that region for 10 years. And the Kurds also have a very capable military force that the Americans backed when they defeated ISIS, one of the deadliest terrorist groups in the world. So Kurds do not want to let go of that region. Of course, Ahmad al-Shara knows that for him to develop Syria, he needs access to those oil fields. And that is why he has used significant military capabilities and intervened in that region. So although there is an agreement, a 21-point plan that Ahmad al-Shara presented late last week, there is still no agreement from the heart on the part of the Kurdish leadership So this region will remain an unstable region in the foreseeable future. This region, there are three districts or three provinces, of which one is occupied by the Kurds. The Kurds live there. The other two are Arabs. Those Arabs, they have supported Ahmad al-Shara's intervention. The Kurds have not. The Kurds want their independence. The Kurds want their autonomy. That is why I said that that region will be a region of conflict in the future. But there is a very important message for Ahmad al-Shara. That is, if he wants unity and stability of Turkey, he needs to have a better relationship with the minorities, whether they are the Kurds, the Druze, the Alawites, and the Christians. All these communities have suffered very significantly since Ahmad al-Shara came to power. So he needs to ensure that there's a presidential council of minority rights where those rights of the Christians, the Druze, the Alawites or the Shiites, and the Kurds are protected. Only then there will be stability and security of Syria in the long term.
Professor, what do you make of the deal that has been signed by the Syrian president and the Kurdish groups?
It is a very robust agreement. I reviewed it myself, but I want to say that it is not the letter of the agreement that counts. It is the spirit of the agreement. So in order for there to be stability and security, there must be friendship between Ahmad al-Shara and the Kurdish leaders. But if there are constant incursions and if there is fighting, if there are attacks of Kurds, the same way 2,500 Shias were killed, a number of Druze were killed, a number of Christians were killed, then there will be no stability. So that agreement is important. On paper, it looks very good, but in spirit, the Kurds Kurds and Ahmad al-Shara must develop a genuine friendship. A country like Syria should be able to give more to the minorities so that the minorities will feel comfortable and will have a lasting, enduring relationship with the central government.
Do you think the fact that the Kurds have been asked to hand over the oil fields to the Syrian army and the forces, SDF, that's going to, make them happy or appease them? Because what does that really leave them with as far as resources are concerned?
Kurds are very unhappy about it because now the resources, the revenue from the oil fields will go to all communities in Syria. Previously, the Kurds benefited largely from it. And there's another aspect that we haven't discussed, and that is there are about 30 to 40,000 ISIS members who are detained by the Kurds. So I only hope that these ISIS members will be rehabilitated and they'll be reintegrated peacefully, and they will not become a future security threat to the stability of either the Kurdish region or the rest of Syria or the world. So I think Ahmad al-Shara taking over the Kurdish regions, he has to do it in a very systematic and a very careful and in a far-reaching way, because it's true that he has got the oil fields, but he's also inheriting 30 to 40,000 ISIS prisoners whom the central government will have to manage from this point onwards.
All right, then, Professor, thank you very much for joining me in this discussion at NewsX World. Moving ahead, viewers, we have some news now coming in from Nepal, where Kathmandu Metropolitan City Mayor Balendra Shah Balen has resigned from his post to contest Nepal's March 5 parliamentary election. After formally resigning from the post, Balen joined the Rashtriya Swatantra Party led by Ravi Lamichhane, which has declared him as its prime ministerial candidate. According to reports, he is contesting the general election from the Jhapa 5 constituency in eastern Nepal's Koshi province, where he will challenge Communist Party of Nepal chairman and recently deposed Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. Oli resigned on September 9 following violent protests by the youth-led Gen Z group against his government over corruption and a ban on social media. After Oli's resignation, the Gen Z youths had asked Balen to take charge of the caretaker government. 35-year-old rapper turned politician had declined to lead the interim government, saying he would rather head the government by contesting the parliamentary election for a full term. And moving on, viewers, astronomers have detected a strange cloud of iron atoms in the shape of a bar stretching 3.7 trillion miles across the Ring Nebula, located 2,600 light years away in the constellation Lyra. The discovery was made using the VIEV instrument on the William Herschel telescope in the Canary Islands. The iron bar, comparable in mass to Earth's molten iron core, could be the remains of a vaporized rocky planet expelled when the nebula's star shed its outer layers. However, this hypothesis remains speculative. The Ring Nebula, formed about 4,000 years ago, continues to intrigue astronomers. It's primarily composed of hydrogen and helium, with trace amounts of heavier elements. As researchers gather more data, they aim to unravel the origin of this mysterious feature. And moving on, viewers, this tragic news from Spain we are tracking. Now, at least 39 people have died and 122 were injured after a high-speed train derailed and collided with an oncoming train in southern Spain. The accident, which took place near Ademuz in the province of Cordoba, is the country's worst rail disaster since 2013. Approximately 400 passengers were aboard the two trains, one traveling from Malaga to Madrid and the other from Huelva. The trains were operating at high speeds, with one traveling at about 200 km per hour at the time of impact. Survivors of the crash described scenes of chaos and horror. Let's listen into what survivors, family members and the survivors across the Red Cross officials have said.
Entonces yo me empecé a levantar un poco y ahí es cuando dije, ya está, esto yo viajo mucho en tren y esto no es normal. Y ahí es cuando miré a mi hermana. O sea, la busqué y fue el último momento que yo recuerdo antes de que todo estuviera oscuro. Y de repente solo se escuchó gritos.
¿Cómo saliste del tren?
Me ayudó gente que estaba bien, rompieron los cristales y me sacaron, porque yo estaba con mucha sangre.
Mi hermano estaba en Madrid y de vuelta ocurrió lo que sabéis. Nosotros en familia no recibimos una llamada de un sanitario porque él había perdido el móvil en el accidente y hemos venido por lo puesto.
Hemos montado un centro de atención, ¿no?, a todas aquellas personas que están en busca de información, en búsqueda de personas con las cuales no han podido todavía contactar, y es el punto más cercano al lugar del accidente en el cual lo hemos podido montar, dado que el acceso a la vía está totalmente restringido y además es un camino, en este caso, de servicio, y no es factible que puedan acercarse tanto, mientras además todavía están trabajando los equipos de rescate, ¿no? El lugar de acceso para las ambulancias pues era difícil, no es un camino ancho, es un camino de un solo sentido, y entonces la coordinación de entradas y salidas de las ambulancias fue un poco más compleja, y luego, por supuesto, también los autobuses, ¿no? Porque incluso muchos de ellos tuvieron que andar parte del recorrido por las vías porque no hay acceso hasta el mismo convoy, hasta el mismo tren en muchos de los casos.
With that, viewers, it's a wrap on this edition of the World Report on NewsX World. Stay tuned for all international news and updates right here.
in the midst of this, lie persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says imposing tariffs on allies is wrong after President Trump threatens duties over Greenland. Trump plans 10% tariffs by February, raising it to 25% by June. 8 European allies condemn President Trump's tariffs threats over Greenland, warning they risk damaging transatlantic ties. The countries defend military drills in Greenland as non-threatening and reject US pressure. An Iranian official says at least 5,000 people, including 500 security personnel, are killed in nationwide protests. Authorities blame terrorists and rioters, with heaviest clashes in Kurdish areas of northwest Iran. The US Justice Department says it sees no basis for a criminal civil rights investigation into the ICE agent who fatally shot Renee Good in Minneapolis. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says standard internal reviews apply, while the DOJ is instead investigating Minnesota officials for allegedly encouraging protests. At least 39 people are killed after 2 trains collide near Cordoba in southern Spain. Over 70 are hospitalized as authorities launch an investigation into the cause. Denmark's Prime Minister says Europe will not be blackmailed by President Trump's tariff threats over Greenland. 8 US allies warn his plans risks a dangerous escalation as he does not rule out using force. Syria declares a nationwide ceasefire with Kurdish-led forces after nearly 2 weeks of fighting. The deal integrates the SDF into state institutions and restores government control over key regions. The Pentagon orders about 1,500 active duty soldiers in Alaska to prepare for possible deployment to Minnesota amid large protests. The troops are on prepare to deploy orders in case violence escalates. We start this hour in Europe, and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has strongly criticised the use of US tariffs against allies, calling it completely wrong. Speaking on the escalating tensions over Greenland, Starmer emphasised that tariffs are not the right approach. He stated that any decision regarding Greenland belongs solely to Denmark and that the future of the region should be discussed calmly, not through economic pressure. The PM also underscored the importance of mature alliances built on respect and not pressure. Starmer reaffirmed the UK's close cooperation with the US on defence and intelligence and stressed that the UK-US relationship is crucial for global security. This comes, of course, as the United States, Donald Trump in particular, has stressed that the United Kingdom and 7 other European countries will face 10% tariffs from the start of next month, February the 1st, due to their opposition of the US annexing Greenland. Of course, we're now joined by Erik Solheim. He's the former Minister of Climate and the Environment of Norway. He joins us live from Oslo. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always, Erik. Of course, this is a developing situation. We've just heard from the UK Prime Minister. A well-worded response, not a strong anti-American stance, of course. There was the allegations of tariffs being completely wrong. Given the careful treading where the European allies and Keir